and put some stuff together on this. And I like the word milestones, I haven't heard that in a while.
I wonder if he's got a few friends at Old Points too. Quite a,
You thinking about buying one?
no.
Nah, they got another hangar out there.
Nah,
Moving on, approval of the minutes.
I will make a recommendation to approve the minutes as presented for the Monday, June 17th meeting.
Support.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Treasurer's report. First up is the accounts payable for June. Anybody has questions or wants to ask about?
Barry, I assume the anchor manufacturing was for that tie-in project you guys were working up there? For new tie-ins for aircraft? Tie-downs?
Yes,
Right,
yes,
okay.
yep.
What's the general legal, is it like do we have a monthly stipend we pay or something? Is it only when we ask for assistance and hourly rate, or what is that anyway?
How does George bill us?
It basically is like an hourly rate.
Hourly rate? Okay, and so they've been working on something recently, I guess.
Several things. He was working on the contracts for us for Berry and Orchard Beach, and that all went in the first half of this year. He's been sending letters to our delinquent tenant for us, amongst probably some other things.
Yeah,
And
how
we'll
about
go months where we don't have any bills from him.
How about the sign,
It's not
anything
doing
new on
work.
the sign on that then? Because
Nothing new on
we're
the
supposed, don't we have an attorney that's supposed to be sending
The
notices?
billboard.
Just not going anywhere, yeah, never going anywhere.
Any other questions on accounts payable?
Benzie County Chamber joined our, what is that? Benzie County Chamber of Commerce annual dues.
We are members of the surrounding communities, Chamber of Commerce, in addition to our own.
Oh, okay.
So Ludington, Wexford, Benzie, Manistee, so we're a member of all the chambers.
Okay, all right,
And we consider that a marketing expense, so.
okay.
Barry, is there anything in here that's unique that you want to highlight at all, or is it all pretty standard?
On the accounts payable,
Yeah.
no, there's nothing unusual.
Make a motion to approve the accounts payable?
I'll second.
Roll call?
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Dons?
Yes.
Mr. Bergstrom?
Yes.
Mrs. Goodman? Mr. Bell?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
And flipping over to the revenue expenses, balance sheet.
So I would just like to point out, you'll see the revenue and expenditures in the state reimbursements under income, the 55,626.21. That is the portion of the land acquisition that is coming back to the airport. You will also see on the balance sheet, we have the state grant that was under assets, and then the corresponding liability for the county loan. So that 263,792.94 is now off the books.
Yeah, I noticed that, that was good to see.
What was
Rachel, do you know how much, I'm not sure the right term, but I'll say we were short paid from what we had submitted? Is that?
I do not, but that would be really easy for me to find out.
I kind of intended to kind of do the same thing, but you have
I have
exact
all
copy
the-
of
I
what we
have-
submitted,
yep,
so
yep.
we should track that, because that should, because I didn't receive anything from the state that said they were denying any particular invoice, so that remainder should still be reimbursable in the future.
We can find that out.
Are those funds already, has the county already received those funds?
Yes.
Okay.
Anything else on the balance sheet? Or the revenues and expenses?
I'll make a motion to accept the June 2019, the revenue and expenses sheet as presented.
I'll support that.
I do have a question, and it's actually a question that Rachel emailed me about, and it is the reimbursements that we were getting are expenditures that came out of our PFC account. Traditionally, we would, when we receive reimbursements for an expense that was paid for out of the PFC account, we would basically take that payment and put it back into the PFC account, so that we're basically maintaining that balance for projects. What you see here is basically taking those funds and putting it into our general fund. Thus, we basically don't have any or very little remaining PFC fund balance left. Is that the way the board would like to see this? I mean, it's in some ways necessary because it balances our general fund as opposed to our general fund being negative, but our PFC fund being positive. But it basically says we don't have any funds left to do local capital projects. So, and that's in essence what you've been telling me about, right?
Yes.
And I thought that it was probably a discussion for the board.
You have a solution for that?
Well, whatever the audit recommendations are, I guess it would be the guidance on that. Guess no?
Well, yes, and I guess my question is, you know, Barry and I have talked about this PFC fund before. It's basically a reimbursement account in the first place. So my question, which we may have to pose to somebody else, is do we have to put that back into the PFC fund?
And I'm quite certain the answer is no.
And if that's the case, I mean, if you look at your fund balance, the $3,396.16, that is actually a negative 1,000 some, because that $3,396.19 includes the PFC funds that you see below of the 4,948.
Well, what
So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
so even as we sit right now today, your general fund is basically negative 1,000 some dollars. If you were to take that 55,000 and put that into the PFC fund, you can see where then you end up with a much heftier negative balance in your general fund. So that's where my concern is.
And this report, the way it is structured, doesn't really show us a general fund balance. When it says fund balance, that's the balance of
Both.
everything.
Well, this is the passenger facility charge that we collect, right? This is what this is. So, we've been using that for, in a sense, providing, the difference between, let's say, a government grant and the amount that we have to
We
put.
generally use it for two things. One is our local share of any grant. Generally that 2.5%, although if it's not a federal grant, it's a state grant, it can be 10%. Or for local projects like the doors that we replaced on the hangar last year came out of this. So those are the two things that we use those funds for.
So, one of my questions then is PFC funds increasing, decreasing, or staying about the same?
It is directly proportional to our number of passengers, which this year we are down.
Down.
So
So PFC funds are down too
PFC
then?
funds will be
Okay, so,
down this year.
So on this, it says the first line through 6/30/2019. What is our basis for how many projects are listed here? Or when they should come off this? So the first item is, expenses prior to, or the tree works, something that happened in 2017. Does it just stay on here until we have another project and then it gets bumped off because that's the space we have?
So, yes, if you see, because the expenses prior to 10,
That's a total.
2017, correct, that is the running total. Basically, yes, those stay on there until we kind of run out of room and then we bump those up, so it would be your expenses prior to whenever, and then that 104, 534, 85 would increase. Right,
When did that start, that total?
I think we started this maybe a year or so back just to have something in front of us to look at
Okay.
this. And that's why it's listed like that.
are you saying though, how far back does that 104, 534,
Or
Do you
the
know the
197,
right?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Are we expecting any reimbursements for projects or anything?
Yes, so that's why I asked Rachel if she knew how much we were short paid on this grant reimbursement, because there's that delta. There's $10,000 from the state for our marketing grant last year that, I'm waiting on an invoice that I need to touch base with you before you leave. And then for our zero-turn mower and our ARF training this year, about $10,000 between those two, and those have already been submitted that we should be getting shortly. So, you know, total 30,000, maybe 35,000 is what we know is outstanding. 20 of that being, you know, reimbursable in the next, 30 to 60 days. That remaining from the land acquisition, that may be out there 6 months, because there needs to be a grant amendment to basically up the grant amount to cover the additional expenses. And those additional expenses will include the final relocation fees, as well as George Saylor's total fees on that project. So once we get all of those numbers together, then we'll go through that process. And
Do you have a rough figure what that might be in terms of reimbursement for us?
I'm thinking it's probably around $10,000 to $15,000, but I don't know for sure because I don't remember how much we submitted.
Well, so it looks like roughly we'll have about 45,000
I
on all
think
those committees.
35.
35,000? Okay. So that would be possible to be used for other projects and, I guess, but at this point in time, we're kind of low on cash.
Yes.
so Rachel, that state reimbursement's at 55,626. If you flip back over here to the PFC charges, we don't see any one item listed for that. I'm gonna guess that covers several of these listed items.
Yep, if you look at any of the Prine and Newhoff that say land acquisition, and then there are some of those also included in the prior to 10/2017 as well.
Is there any way to know or to set this up so that this could slide to the left, and if any of those totals on the column to the right had a reimbursable coming at some point in time, maybe there'd be a spot for it, so that now that that's come back, we could throw those in there? And at a glance, you'd know, okay, this project was semi-reimbursable, but the hangar doors was all on us, type of thing. I don't know if this is coming out of a
Sort of
computer,
two columns in this,
Yeah.
two columns.
or if this is customizable at all.
We can, do that, we can make some changes. I also, that might be something we incorporate when the new finance officer gets hired. They will be taking over the airport treasurer position. I had talked with Barry about separating out this PFC fund from this statement. I kind of had decided to wait until that person
Okay.
got in place. That person, myself, and Joe Verlin from the auditing firm are going to meet and go over some things. So I kind of wanted to get all of us on the same page and then together look at separating out this PFC. That might be something that would be best to do at that time,
Okay,
when we kind of revamp how that PFC is shown to you.
all right.
But I think in general, it is a good idea, basically what you're asking is a better way for management to track where we stand as far as reimbursements go on some of these projects that go
Yeah.
on for potentially a couple of years, and all
We
our
know it's by
every-
glancing and seeing a zero in the right column, we know it's still pending.
Right.
And now that it's back, yeah, okay. Anything else? I think we have an open
Jeff, when is how long do you think it'll be before we got a finance officer in there?
Oh, there's two, what's it, interviews, is it this week or next week?
This week.
This week. So,
Probably within a month.
depends what happens out of that. Yeah, best scenario, probably 4 weeks.
So we had a motion to accept the financial statements in a second in the discussion.
We haven't resolved whether we want to put this money back into the PFC fund yet. You know, where the question came up?
I think that Barry's question was more on how we want these
Right.
reports to reflect it or show us so that we see better detail.
No, I would say it, the original question I was posing was, do we follow our traditions, which would be that we would take those reimbursable funds and we would put them back into the PFC account,
Right.
leaving us with a substantial negative general fund balance, but a healthy capital PFC account balance? Or
It's
do
tomato,
we,
tomato.
it's just shuffling it around,
But
but.
isn't that something that the new finance person,
Right.
and having a conversation with them and setting up
Yep,
that?
and they can be involved, and that's probably a good point too, because I think they need to be involved in the conversations with PFC and finding out a little more about what we can and cannot do, and, yeah.
So in the meantime, put it back where it was going before until we get this other stuff resolved.
They would status quo until we
Right.
get, until we get a new answer.
Put it back in the PFC fund account
Okay.
until we get it resolved and decide down the road what modifications otherwise we want to do.
Either way, we need more money.
Or spend less.
All right, so, do we want to redo this motion, or
He's got the direction.
he's got direction? Good.
It's Rachel that needs
Rachel's got
direction.
the
Okay, Rachel's got the direction, so there's a motion to approve the balance sheet, the revenues and expenses, I believe,
Right.
and it was seconded. And that is an all in favor?
Aye.
Next item, delinquent hangar tenant, per George, my communications with him, our attorney, the letter was served on June 24th. He has not heard anything back on his end. Have we heard anything in?
No.
Yes, okay, so, I wish George would send me, I don't have a copy of that letter. Did he copy you at all?
No.
All right, I'll get it and I'll follow up and see if I can have another conversation with him and give an update.
So he hasn't made any additional
No,
payments?
we gave him a timeline,
Yeah.
so we're inside of 30 days of that, when he was served on the 24th of June. We gave him a 30-day option and a 60-day option to settle at 2 different amounts. So I'll just reach out to him and see if he's
Gonna do it.
considering either.
Okay.
I believe that's what we had before we was talking about.
Yeah, and then he's made some payments, so we adjusted some of the, all right, committee reports. Executive committee did not meet, but we are researching funding at the other airports to continue that process to get the budget committee back some better information. The budget committee did not meet this month. And the capital projects committee did not meet this month. But there's some loose discussions ongoing, as you see with Brian. I guess my question to the board on that would be, we'll get his information back. He's gonna wanna essentially say, if it costs me X to build, I'll spend the money if I've got X number of years rent-free, and we get to an agreement. One other option to consider is, and I don't know, Barry, if this is possible, do we just sell him that hangar? We work out a lease agreement, so he leases that building in the condition it's in for a specified period of time, just like our other private owned hangar on the property. You know, typically those are 30 or 50-year lease, and then they start brand new construction. Now, this would be unique, but I don't know, and then they divert back to either a rental at the end or a turn it over to the airport. So I don't know if that gives him any flexibility, if we considered that, and then we're receiving a small monthly lease arrangement for a period of time, or if we wanna go into this where we're receiving nothing, and he's doing the investment.
Yeah, we can see what he writes up in terms of
Okay.
his proposal, kind of go from there.
And I think we also probably need George's involvement on this, although I had, communication with George probably 2 weeks ago now, when we thought we were gonna be able to use this other hangar, and he never responded to me, so I'm concerned with the level of responsiveness, and I know you've
Okay.
had some challenges too.
Yeah.
But I think this is gonna be an interesting contract, and we'll definitely need his involvement. And I think some of that, which way to go, I think might be based on his
I
recommendation.
did have a conversation, I ran into Andy Richards from PCA, and said, what the heck, and I had that conversation with him about, would they be interested in helping us for the betterment of the community, rehab that
Okay, yeah.
hangar, and he just about fell out of his golf cart. He said they're used to donating small amounts to charities, but not, he didn't know where to go with that $100,000 to $150,000 question. But he did agree to have a coffee with me out here sometime. So now this came up, and Ryan works at PCA, so whether or not they participate with him in order to have that name on the building and some historic marker, we can go down that road and see. It might help Ryan out and us out.
I think if,
How do, oh, go on, sorry.
I think if we just go into an arrangement where he's providing labor for free rent, we've got no leverage in that kind of a deal if he's not doing what he says he's gonna do.
And can he do it? I mean, I could go probably remodel that thing, but it might not be how it should be, so does this guy have any skill sets to be able to do this? I mean, we don't want a building that, it's needs remodeling, but we don't want it in worse shape, or,
I think if-
structurally.
I think if we have the ability to sign off on, this is the door I'd like to do, and we make sure it's from a sound contractor that's installing it, or he's participating with somebody that can inspect it, it's gotta end up meeting
Right,
qualifications to be occupiable.
we want to put that in that contract.
Yeah,
And milestones on the timeline,
Mhm.
so you can track the progress.
I think it's interesting, and it fits right into what we were talking about, private investment.
Doesn't Martin Marietta use the airport a lot for, I know that, was it Sawhill? Is he at Martin Marietta, was he at Martin?
Was,
Yeah,
I don't know if he still is.
well, he used to fly all the time, I don't know if Rifle is still flying out here all the time or not, but, no,
Mm,
okay,
PCA utilizes the airport more than Martin Marietta does.
all right. That's
But
kind of a good idea
Bluff's
to have
using a lot.
their name on the hangar, that'd be kind of cool.
All right, that wraps up committee, so airport director's report.
Okay.
I'm gonna have a cup of coffee, so you guys know. Anybody else? Coffee refill?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pass those back so Rachel can have them.
I can grab right over you.
Progress with pigeon removal.
Well, I think progress last time.
Did we get a border collie?
No, we had dinner.
Squab, it's not pigeon anymore, it's squab.
Could go to Argentina for the
Okay, no accidents or incidents for the month. Summer is here, it's amazing how like the spigot just turns on about 10 days before the 4th and it suddenly is busy. All good, across all aspects of the airport from, general aviation through on the commercial side. It's just a lot busier in the summer than it is the rest of the year, as is our community. The storm electrical damage, the contractor was out here and has now installed our new windsock, so that was the biggest, thing that had been damaged in that lightning strike. There's still 2 minor items that are not yet pinned down. There's a phone system between here and our fire station over in the truck barn where our fire truck is located, and that's still not operational. And then there's a gate access panel that basically reads the card reader for the gate on the other end of the terminal, and that's not it. Otherwise, everything else has been repaired under that issue. Pigeon removal, last month I mentioned we just acquired a trap.
Is there,
for the Sorry.
Is there any out of pocket for us then, is this all?
We've been reimbursed by the insurance company
Okay,
based on the anticipated quotes for all these projects. So at this point, any additional work is coming out of our pocket because we've already been paid back for it.
What's the alternative? I mean, a phone system to the fire barn is probably pretty important.
It's something that's a required item, so yes, it's gotta get addressed.
Do we have an alternative that do we have walkie-talkies or something?
Right now, yes, we're using either airport radios or cell phone.
Okay.
How much out of pocket roughly?
I don't know
Oh, okay.
until that can be, the issue be tracked down, because it appears that everything should be working, but it's not, so one component in the chain of things is not working correctly and haven't been able to track it down. We thought maybe it was a wiring issue because it's a hardwired system between the airline office, the front desk, and over there. We thought maybe it was a wiring issue, but that doesn't appear to be the case if the wiring checks out. So, pigeon removal. So, as I mentioned last month, we had acquired a trap based on the recommendation of our USDA wildlife specialists who have been visiting us for the last year, and that's actually worked pretty well, surprisingly, or I'm at least surprised. And we've probably trapped 10 or more pigeons, and what used to be any given day you could see 10 to 15 pigeons flying around, you now will see 1. So I think we actually have.
Still got one hold on.
I think that's just kind of transient, just someone flying in and, stops here. So I think we've got.
It's an airport.
Yeah, it's an airport, yes. I think we've got the problem under control. They're not nesting here anymore.
They're resting.
And we've got the tools now to really prevent that issue from happening in the future. So, I've not, since we've gone through these pigeon removals, I've not had any complaints from any of our tenants with issues, so.
Well, that's good,
Yeah.
very good.
And the zero-turn mower that we had ordered as of last meeting, we've now received, and it's proving very effective. And what used to take 2 days of walking up and down the runway with the hand push mower now can be done in half a day. Although, once you get a better piece of equipment, then you start mowing things that you didn't used to, like little growth trees over there. Now we can make it look all nice. So overall, I think it's aiding the appearance of the airport that we have the right tools to do what we need.
Barry, has it been you and your staff that has mowed from the fence out to the highway over here and back? It
Yes.
looks good.
Yeah, we
I haven't
normally
noticed
do that.
Okay, it looks good.
Although we haven't been doing this, but I requested that we start doing this, is at the west end of the airport on 31, southwest corner. The city's got a pump house there, and there's a little patch between the pump house and our fence. And brush had started to grow up, and last week they went through with the mower when they were doing the roadside and got that all cleared, so. And
Did the grant funds come in too already on that then, or not?
we've submitted the reimbursement on that, but have not yet received payment. So that's one of the things that I'm waiting for that I think we'll be getting soon.
Change this a little bit.
Our missing tie downs, I'd mentioned we were working on replacing them. You questioned some of the expenses in the accounts payable on that. Those have all now been in place, and we now, all of our tie downs are now functional again. Moving on to page 2, we've got the,
You've got a hiccup on this again this month. When you look at the best fares plus 7 days parking, ours increased. That should be status quo from upper column of best fares.
how does,
That happened last month too. At any rate, I just wanted to point that out. because
Yep.
that-
yep,
That's the 437 to 514.
Yes.
yeah. So that 514 should be 437,
Well, that's just extra income.
and I know why it's doing that. I did, per a conversation last month, reevaluate all the parking rates of all the surrounding airports, and they've all gone up since I've last looked. So Traverse City, I've been reporting it as $40 for a week's parking, it's now 44. Grand Rapids was 54, now it's 63, and Muskegon was 36, and now it's 60. So,
36 to 60.
yes. And actually, probably 4 years ago, they were offering free parking. So, they're also struggling with their budget down in Muskegon, because they've, if you've ever been to
Contracting, hasn't it?
well, it's been contracting, but their terminal, if you've ever been there, it's got a restaurant, it's a fairly large terminal, and it's about 35, 40 years old, so HVAC's done. Everything about that terminal is at the end of its life, and they have not planned as to how they're going to basically deal with that, those expenses, because those again are all end up being local expenses. So, I know why they're raising their parking rates. So, other than my mistake in the spreadsheet, there's a couple of interesting things as it relates to airfares this month that jump out at me. One is for end of August, which is getting into the softer part of the summer. Just like we see here in our immediate area, summer really now is a 6-week period of basically just before July until about mid-August. This is towards the end of August, so you're starting to see that taper off of demand. September is, after Labor Day, is traditionally a very weak month. Nationwide, September and January are the 2 weakest months for air travel. So we're kind of starting to see that. And that's why kind of across the board, airfares are lower than they have been. But what I find very interesting is, you know, Muskegon is an essential air service airport with current service from SkyWest, 50-seat regional jet. And the prices, I mean, United was basically having a fare sale out of Muskegon this month. The average fare out of Muskegon is lower than the average fare out of Grand Rapids, which I've never seen that happen before.
Is that a round trip or just one way?
These are all round trips.
All round trips.
And what I kind of find interesting, if you look at just kind of going down the Muskegon fares, a good number of them are under $300 round trip. Our average fare just to Chicago is $209. So basically, you can get anywhere in the country for just a few dollars more out of Muskegon than you can get to Chicago from here. And again, because we're not part of a national carrier, to then do that connection, you take our fare and then add on a full fare out of Midway, and you end up with, you know, our higher fare. So again, we're more expensive than the neighboring airports for connections and less convenient, which translates directly into decreases in our passengers versus a year or two ago. So the trends are similar, some of the details are a bit different. And any questions on the airfare report?
Well, we are the most reasonable for best fares plus 7 days parking right now, so that's, I guess that's a plus.
No, because we're
We're
still
still the highest.
the highest, because that would be 437
Oh,
if I
okay.
corrected that
Yeah.
formula.
Okay.
It's a lot closer,
Mhm.
and then if you take in drive time and all of the other less tangible factors, you know, there's still something to be said, but it's, many people, when making their purchase decisions, only look at the initial bottom line,
Yeah, I didn't look at
not,
the bottom. I looked at the bold 209.
so. Okay, so on the performance side, passengers for the month, we had a total of 774 for June, now this is. That is down from a year ago, 24%. That's basically our most significant drop we've had. We've been 10 to 15% a few months recently, but 24% is the most significant drop. And you know, we're experiencing this as we're shifting from kind of off-season to peak season travel. And our peak season travel traditionally has been dominated by a lot of Traverse City passenger overflow. With our prices, et cetera, that's not as appealing as it used to be. So we are now kind of the results of this is that we are more directly servicing just our immediate region, basically I'd say from Frankfurt south, as opposed to kind of going all the way up to the Branch-Verse region and kind of dealing with some of their overflow because of their historically high prices.
I believe they increased seat counts up there, haven't they? Did
They've-
you tell us that last?
They've increased seat counts significantly, which has then led to lower fares to fill all of those additional seats. And, you know, I don't always track everything that's going on in Traverse City, but it's actually surprising. It was surprising to me with this weekend I was looking, just the number of destinations they actually now serve nonstop.
They keep adding.
They keep adding, so, you know, not only
He's on the news all the time.
some of the Florida things that they've recently announced, but they've now got Washington DC, New York, Atlanta, Denver, Dallas, a good number of locations in the summer season that you can get nonstop.
DC one's mind-boggling to me. Seriously.
Why's that?
One would not think there was that much
There's not
demand.
enough, there's not enough flow from Traverse City to DC.
Oh,
It's the other
It was
way.
unusual when Grand Rapids got that run years ago.
But it is interesting in kind of looking at the top destinations out of Traverse City, or more likely into Traverse City. They're tourism focused, and the number one destination into Traverse City is people in the greater New York area. So that region is drawing people nationally from a vacation and tourism standpoint. And I suspect the greater DC area is kind of filling some of that role.
Barry, you may have covered it, sorry, but I'm a little curious about why the fare that we have is like double what's going on in other areas. What's the deal there?
Because all of our cheap seats have been sold out.
Okay.
So, I mean, our fares start at 129, but
How many-
those are all
How many do we have at 129?
3 seats. So
3 seats.
10% of the seats are at that lowest fare level.
So how's the number of people that have been flying at 37?
Well, I mean, so you look at the numbers here for the month, I mean, we're down 24%.
Yeah,
I talk a little bit later in my report on some more statistics, so I'll kind of wait to answer that then. Otherwise, I end up covering all of this stuff twice.
okay,
So, on the performance side, we did have one canceled flight, which is the first canceled flight we've had since February. But it really went off, you know, very smoothly. Unlike historically with some other operators where they would drag on and kind of say, oh, well, no, we'll wait an hour, and people are just kind of waiting around. As soon as they realized what was going on, they canceled the flight, came up with an alternative plan, which was basically to fly. It was a flight from Chicago up. So they brought in a new aircraft the next day, accounted the people on the next morning. And so, I mean, from a recovery and kind of customer service standpoint, it went about as smooth as could be asked for. And again, since that was our first cancellation in 4 months, that's not, I'm fine. I wish it would be zero all the time, but when things do happen, I'm glad when they happen as smoothly as possible.
You get a lot more flights too, right?
No, I'm
Okay, yeah,
gonna,
that's one.
well,
Oh,
that's some of the statistics that I'll talk about that kind of directly tie into our number of passengers. And then, you know, 5 flights were delayed, but I think the longest delay was 30 minutes, so not really substantial in any way. So then, one of the reasons our budget this year has been challenging is we've had an awful lot of expenditures in the repairs maintenance category. And unfortunately, I've got another issue to bring to you. So our fuel farm, our jet and aviation fuel, in the terminal here, there's a fuel system monitor that basically keeps track of fuel quantities. It does fuel leak tests. I mean, it has warnings for overflow, underflow, etc. So it's a required component of the system. It is currently not operational. We've had a series of issues with this starting probably, I would say, in February, March. We've had Northern Pump out here twice now to repair, or actually maybe they've been out here 3 times repairing the system. They solved one issue. First issue was a probe in the tank had failed. They replaced that, got that working. Now a new issue's cropped up, and basically the system just says it's inactive, not measuring, not doing anything. They came out here, got it working, then also finished the installation of some other equipment that Eagle is now requiring that we have for certification of our underground fuel tanks. A week after that, it's back into that same situation. So they are recommending that we replace this equipment. It's probably the same age as the tanks, which is now about 20 years old. None of the components on it are actually supported or available anymore from a parts standpoint. In fact, a few years ago when it's got a little printer on it that prints out things, I actually had to go on eBay and find a refurbished one of those to get that printing when it stopped printing. So I have here a quote from Northern Pump in the amount of $10,003 to basically replace the system with an updated modern system. And would like some direction from the board as to how to proceed. I'm sure we can get it working again. But I'd estimate we probably have had about $2,500 in repairs on the system already this year. And I think we're at the point where we're basically throwing good money after bad.
Very last month, we had something like $5,000 with Northern Pump or
Yep,
something, that
and
same
that-
company for all the same
Yes,
stuff.
and there are two projects. One is this DEQ required set of improvements. And the other part of that bill is some of these other repairs that have been going on.
So that
to
whole
keep-
5,000 wasn't for this?
Was not
purpose?
for-
Okay.
Specifically repairs to the existing system, but enhancements.
So
And
it is a-
most of those are, I can't say every single one of those, but most of those, you know, we would have to have done anyway, even if we'd replaced this sooner. Except for the labor.
Now, is there anybody else around you can get a bid from, or is it really kind of just fishing in the big lake of Michigan?
There are really two firms that really service airport type equipment, Northern Pump and then Sparling Corporation. And Sparling installed the tanks and the whole system at that time. We've recently switched maintenance and other things to Northern Pump because every time we've gone out for quotes, they've been significantly less expensive. Partly because Sparling is coming up from south of Detroit, so travel time and those issues end up being a significant piece of their bids. So I'm comfortable that this would be the lower of two bids if we did get another one.
Where are the
And
funds-
beyond that, we're bringing people in from even farther away.
Yeah.
Where
they
are
are
the funds
closer
in
to-
for this?
Huh?
Where are the funds for this in?
This would
Okay.
be unbudgeted from an account that's already probably $15,000 over budget.
Rachel, any suggestions?
Any sales?
It's just critical that we have this done, is that right?
Yes, I mean, we cannot continue to operate.
Well, this is one of these deals where, when we just had our first budget study session, what was it, Monday, Tuesday? Friday, that's right, Friday.
Today's Monday.
Today's Monday. So Friday last week, and we had the $10,000 requested increase. It wound up coming across from that meeting at 5.
Maybe we have another one coming up, in which we
Yes.
can talk about
Yep.
issues, and this would be the issue to bring up.
Well, the thing of it is, we gotta cover this cost, so, I mean, we gotta figure out a way to make that happen.
10,000,
Yeah,
that's what we need.
yeah, well, plus, yeah, without a doubt.
Is this a loan then, or is this?
No, what, we need to allocate the extra 10 as opposed to 5. So if we can,
To cover this, is that what you're saying, cover this?
So we've got an issue that we can bring up that's documented and we can address and. So,
This is from the county you're talking
yeah,
about.
yeah. Because we are underfunding the airport for something this size, you know, I mean, we're quite spartan, we're about what, 25% of the budget, basically.
Roughly.
That's gotta be what we gotta do, but, we got the next meeting is scheduled for the,
July 25th or something like
Are you down now, Barry? Or we're in the, it's gonna fail shortly mode?
The system is not operating right now.
It's not.
So we go out with a stick and
I was
actually
gonna say, this
measure.
is as far as recording, but the pumps still run.
Yeah,
Still
you can
sell
still-
fuel.
We can dispense fuel, but we don't know how much fuel we
Stick in the
have.
tanks.
And we're required to have monthly leak test reports, which we can't get right now. So
Okay.
that's where we're, you know, we can't continue on like this because we're in violation of who knows what rules
Okay.
by not doing all the things we're supposed to be doing.
No PFC fund for this, I guess,
Now,
It was the 50 that we just got.
So this would need to be addressed prior to the beginning of the new
yes,
fiscal
it
year.
would.
Anybody care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to go ahead and approve this expenditure, $10,003.
From what line item?
Well, it's gotta be one of those things, you're gonna have to pull it from someplace there, and that's what the county supports the airport with. I mean, it's, you either do it or you don't do it. If you don't do it,
I mean,
you're.
is there a thought that we should wait and see how your next,
I would think we
Goes
can
to the
probably
county.
make this lift. I don't think that's gonna be a problem, but again, that's for the future budget. So, or we just allocate it now to cover this expense. Take it to Ways and Means. Why don't you get on the Ways and Means agenda, Barry, and take it to that with a good story and see if we can take care of that, a one-shot deal for this, because this is kind of critical.
Yes.
Because we don't want to wait for that October 1 start of the budget.
Julie, when is the next, I should know this, when's the next Ways and Means Committee meeting?
First Friday of the month, huh?
No, would be Monday,
Of August?
August 12th.
August 12th, okay.
So I guess so are you suggesting we make a proposal at the Ways and Means Committee
So that can come to the board
of,
for funding this
for
particular
funding
item.
this particular item this
Yes,
fiscal year?
yes,
This
yes.
emergent item.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's the 12th at 9 a.m. is Ways and Means, August 12th.
So in the meantime, he uses the measuring stick. Now, Barry, once you go ahead and give him the okay on this, what kind of time frame do you have for installation and completing the project?
I would guess less than 30 days.
Okay. Sometimes they'll say 6 months.
That's not been my experience in
Okay.
other projects we've had in Northern Public, so.
So how old is the system? 10 years?
20, probably
20 years.
years.
Yeah, well, it's due. It's
Yeah,
due.
it's
It's just,
absolutely due.
where did the money come from? Yeah. Okay, I think we can get that through.
I have
We'll
faith
put
in
it on
you
you,
guys.
Mark.
Huh?
I have
Your
faith
Ways and
in you.
Means.
Yes.
You want to email me
Yeah.
about the Ways
Did
and
our,
Means
delinquent
and any
tenant
information you
will
want to
accept
include
our
on
offer?
the agenda?
So we have a motion,
Never second.
And what is the motion?
do we want to adjust that to, or do we,
I think it's to proceed with.
I don't even know if you probably want to withdraw it, just have Barry, see if it comes
Proceed
back
away.
with,
Jeff, you guys
does that put us
Comes
into,
back.
so that, does that put us into August 19th
it's gonna,
Right.
before,
there's no question.
before we make a decision? So can you survive a month?
Now, once you.
You're gonna have to, I mean, what else are we gonna do? Unless you can rob it from someplace else.
Now, question here, once you guys, he goes to the Ways and Means Committee, and you guys all give him a nod of approval, can then Barry go ahead and move forward with it?
Just wait for that.
Gotta wait for the full board. The full board meets on the
Okay,
27th.
Okay,
Now,
Okay,
if we
got it.
have, if we feel
We're
like
talking the
that,
county board,
yeah,
right,
27th of this month,
Next month.
it's next
of
month,
July, of August.
so we're.
Now we're into
So we
September.
meet tomorrow.
well, you almost need to go ahead with doing this, don't you? It's
Or if you wanna come tomorrow.
essential. I mean, maybe we purchase it and you know, gotta pay it down the road a little bit. And that's, you know.
I'm looking for direction here because
I don't know how critical it is to have it right now.
50% down and 50% when it's completed.
Right, so that you're
Okay.
talking 50% when it's completed,
5,000.
30-day period for payment at least, billing and then payment, so. you know,
30 days about?
Yeah,
a month?
that would give us
should be
time
enough.
to-
That's more than enough.
See if we can get the money across. If not, we have to fix it.
I tell you what, it's a tight budget at the county right now too, so it's not. there's
Well,
not a lot of-
every year it's tight. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just,
It is,
we're under 100,000.
but this is pretty critical.
Have we got 5,000 to steal anywhere? If you okay this,
Well, I
Next
think Karen
week.
was saying, we got 30 days maybe. If you
that's on
purchase
the,
it, you got
that's on the
30.
backside.
All right,
50% due upon completion.
okay,
So we're hoping that they can get this done in 30 days. So
okay.
we're buying some time, but we've still got to
So
get.
from a cash flow perspective, we basically operate where if we're short, we're essentially getting an interest-free loan from the county. So, is it possible to spend the dollars? Yes. I mean, because if you look at today's report, our fund balance was negative 50,000 until this past month. So we've been borrowing from the county until that reimbursement came through. So we can technically pay the bills. How it reflects on our budget, we would, before the end of the fiscal year, need to make appropriate budget amendments to reflect whatever we end up doing to, you know, bucket we, you know, have this coming out of, whether it be, you know, formally recognizing a loan from the county for it, and therefore taking it out of general fund, or, you know, changing something else in the budget, or additional revenue to cover it. So those are the practicality of how it works. What you're comfortable with approving is some combination of that. Did I say anything incorrect there?
No.
Okay.
We'll see what we can come out of with tomorrow's meeting also.
Okay.
Maybe we can expedite it. I've got this, so I'll bring this up and
Okay.
we'll see what
Do
we
you
can.
want me to show up?
I don't know if you need to, if you got time, you want to, you're more than welcome to, but. we can
It's just
we can
without
carry-
having an agenda slot, I don't wanna waste 2
No,
hours,
no,
just not knowing when it would be discussed.
Well, we can't take action on it until it goes through the normal procedure, I would assume.
Well, I don't, if you got a emergency situation that's, see what the board wants to do, we can always allocate the funds. I mean, that happens, that's not unheard of, it generally, it's nice to funnel everything through Ways and Means, but
But that's this fiscal year. We could do it this fiscal year. And we do have a little room in this fiscal year, don't we?
So a little,
Because we're not hit
there's a
here.
little cushion.
Yeah, there's a little cushion in this year's,
yeah,
right? Yeah. 'Cause
not much.
well, not much, but we do have a little cushion, so we're asking for money to be spent from this year's. And then we'll have the discussion about putting the 10,000 in the next year's. Keep the two separate. This is an emergent situation now.
So, okay,
Might work, yeah.
so you wanna withdraw that motion and, we'll see what happens, what we can pull off
Never
tomorrow.
seconded, so technically.
So still, if we withdraw that motion, we're gonna wait and see what happens tomorrow. We're not making a decision on this as a board in this room.
Pending approval, I guess we could have a motion pending approval of the county board.
That's what I would, that would be,
I'll
that
make-
gives
I'll
him
make that
direction to be
motion.
able to make a phone call in 2 days if, to get the balls turning.
Yeah, I'll make that motion pending approval of the county board to, go forward with the northern pump bid of $10,003 for repairs.
I'll second that.
Should be a roll call.
Probably, when in doubt, it's always best.
Yeah.
Money,
Mr. Dons,
yes.
Mrs. Goodman,
Yes.
Mr. Bergstrom,
Yes.
Mr. Bell,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Cobb.
Yes.
Okay. Be moving on to less dire news. Land acquisition, so we've talked about it numerous times already. We've received our reimbursement check for that. County's been paid back on their loan. I've also mentioned that we still have to incur relocation costs and then the environmental cleanup, which at a previous meeting we've already discussed about postponing that for the foreseeable future. Mr. Adamczyk has an auction scheduled for the Saturday, the 27th of this month, which means he does intend to have vacated the property by the August 1st date. That's part of our original agreement. So hopefully that all happens and we don't need to expend more money with George and letters and plans to, you know, do other things, but that's the latest information I have on that.
Your first point was the county was reimbursed for their funds to us.
The loan we made.
The loan.
Yes, yes.
That's good credit for us at tomorrow's meeting.
Yeah, you're requesting a grant.
Our runway rehabilitation project is still chugging towards our construction window of September 9th through September 18th. The crack sealing and remarking of our airfield, we don't have a date set for that yet, but it needs to be at least 30 days after the completion of the paving of the runway. Our wildlife survey, that's been going on for a year. It's surprising that it's actually been a year, actually finishes up this week. And we should get our report out of that within the next 3 months, which will make my airport inspector happy. Looking forward to capital projects, the plan now is to use the funds that were freed up by the federal grant to move forward our airport layout plan to this coming fiscal year. Hopefully that can start this fall, because that's a 12 to 18 month project. And then our MAP meeting, and I don't even know what MAP stands for. It's an acronym that everyone uses, but no one really knows what it means. It's our annual meeting with the state and sometimes FAA to really plan out and look at our future capital projects, kind of our 5 to 10 year plan as it relates to federally funded projects. And given the fact that we received a federal grant, freeing up money, that kind of will allow the opportunity for some things to shift around on that plan. And that's scheduled for the first week of October right now. Air service updates. So, picking up some of the conversation we were having earlier, we ended up down 24% in June versus 2018. We ended up having 23% fewer flights in June of this year versus June of last year. Part of that is for 3/4 of the month, 3 Saturdays, we did not have Saturday flights, so we were still kind of operating our lean schedule until the 20th of June. But also, so that accounts for probably 10% of that. The other fewer flights versus the year ago are really just demand driven. Part of that is some of the things we've talked about with less demand because of competitive pricing in the region, but also part of it is where the 4th falls. Last year, the 4th was on a Wednesday, so the weekend before the 4th was nearly as busy as the weekend after, because it fell right in the middle of the week. This year, with the 4th being on a Thursday, and for the next few years, it's really one weekend that gets all of the traffic. And like a year ago, we had 3 flights operate on the Sunday after the 4th, so that's 90 passengers, and we probably could have had 2 more. There's the amount of demand that wants to leave here on that particular day at the end of Forest Festival is, but there's only so many planes you can have, so many round trips you can do in a day, and 3 is basically a single crew or limit. So, we're kind of compressing what was over 2 weekends into 1 weekend, and then we capacity constrain it because we can only do 3 flights.
Why do we have fewer Saturday flights? Is there a reason for that?
That goes back to the whole reason that basically since last September, we've had fewer flights than we traditionally have, because the plan had been to be operating 19-seat aircraft all winter, not 30-seat, but to accommodate, because of the inavailability of the 19-seat aircraft, ended up operating more expensive aircraft to bring costs in alignment with revenues. We had to basically make 2 adjustments. One is no Saturdays throughout that period, And the second being, the schedule we had wasn't our traditional overnight here, it was just a midday turn. So we had less desirable schedule, less flights, but a nicer aircraft, nicer, more expensive aircraft during that period. And that ended basically June 20th.
So Barry, one question over there, in June we had 3 less flights on Saturday, but all the other flights, were they full capacity or just 80% or somewhere around there? So even if they had, what I'm getting to, even if they had the Saturday flight, it probably wouldn't have had that much more impact on passengers.
It does more than you think, because people
Okay.
generally need to travel on certain, I mean, not everybody has complete flexibility. Oh, I can leave on a Tuesday or a Thursday, what's cheapest or what's available. If people are traveling and they want to either be here or leave here on a Saturday and we don't have a flight, they're going to go out of Traverse City or some other airport. So, yes, some is flexible,
Okay.
but I'd estimate 50%, if not more, just those other directions. And likewise, even on a given day, with only one, and this is just in the essential air service area, there are many conversations that happen about frequency versus size. Nicer aircraft, but less frequent versus less desirable aircraft but more frequency. And there are, people who swear by, if you don't have 3 flights a day, such that pretty much you've got an option available anytime someone wants to fly, whether they, first thing in the morning, midday, evening type thing, they claim you will see less passengers. And for some people, that would be true. All of those factors kind of balance, out. We've traditionally had the opinion that we strive for better aircraft at the expense of less frequency. There are other airports that would say we're not making the right decision there. I don't think that's necessarily true, but we'll have the opportunity in about 6 months to have all those conversations again. So going forward, July is trending about the same as June, looking to be down about 25%. August, still out a little ways, is not trending down. As of June 30th, advanced booking for August, we're only down 2%. So not sure why that is. Part of it could just be the switch from kind of the peak summer season and trying to then pull that Traverse City demand and kind of more really basically dealing with our traditional local passengers or those that have business or tourism related activities in our more immediate vicinity. Did I answer some of the pent up questions that I was delaying from earlier?
Yeah.
Moving on then, so summer schedule, I've touched on some of this, so we ended up adding fewer flights than a year ago, which is part of why we ended up with fewer flights in June. And after the, basically July 8th, I think was that Sunday, I'm not sure we're going to need to add any additional flights this summer. The flights we have are selling out, but going from being able to sell 30 seats to selling 60 seats and making that additional bucket make sense, like for example, this week, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday are all sold out coming in, but they sold out like maybe a week ago. So with 2 weeks notice, there's clearly not enough demand to make that extra jump to 30 more seats. So there's one weekend in August that I'm thinking might justify adding a flight or two, because they're already at like 25 sold. So I think there's enough advance window and apparently enough demand and that's kind of that weekend is kind of the traditional, we're leaving northern Michigan weekend because we gotta go back for kids' school or other things. There's kind of, it's interesting seeing some of the patterns of summer where 4th of July, the weekends around it. This past weekend is traditionally a dead weekend just because everyone just got done traveling. The next 2 weeks are just overall good, and then there's a weekend in August that's kind of everyone's leaving. So we'll see on that. Schedule is currently bookable through June 20th of 2020, and just a reminder that we are closed as an airport during construction from September 10th through September 19th. Hopefully that's the exact dates and that doesn't rain like for a week there and cause that schedule to be completely thrown in the water. In talking with the airline, so they do not have flights scheduled in that period. They are selling tickets from the 20th on. If construction doesn't go well for whether or other reasons, the plan would probably be to operate those flights out of Traverse City instead of canceling them. So we will most likely have flights in one form or another, whether we're open or not, starting the 20th.
Would they transport passengers?
And then transporting as appropriate. So,
Is the north-south shut down the entire time as well?
Yes, I mean, there may be periods of time where we can have it open, but the plan is to
Complete closure?
complete closure. So they're not scheduling certain aspects of the construction to allow it to be open. And just starting to think about this on people's radar, especially, well, some of our newer members who have not gone through an RFP process with the feds for essential air service. Our existing contract with DOT ends basically 15 months from now, at the end of next fiscal year. The bidding process for that is likely to start around the end of this year. And therefore I'm starting to track a little bit more about what's kind of going on there. Up on the board behind Doug is a recent set of bids that came in for an airport in southern Illinois. For those of you that were involved in this the last time or times before, Boutique, Air Choice One, SkyWest are names that you're familiar with. Southern and Cape Air less so. And each one of those carriers bid multiple different options. So basically, you've got bidder, there are different options, number of flights to which airport, and then millions of dollars of subsidy. What I'm finding interesting is that set of bidders is pretty much the set that is out there right now. So, and unlike over the last few years, some of those carriers like Southern are newer, Boutique's a little bit newer to essential air service. They're all getting kind of their understanding as to how the process works, understanding their costs, and their bids pretty much are very close to each other. Whereas over the last 5 to 10 years, you could see bids that differed by 50% into airports.
What's BNA?
That is Nashville.
Nashville?
Yep.
So Southern gave them 4 different options, the first one being 36 flights
To St. Louis.
A week?
A week, yes.
to St. Louis 2.9, or 18 to Nashville and 18 to St. Louis for 3.2.
Did they ever up their planes? What size?
Is Boutique,
Boutique.
are there still 9 passenger,
Boutique is still,
Single engine 9.
single engine, are they all that way?
so on that
Other than
list,
SkyWest?
everything except SkyWest is 9 passenger aircraft. So
Even though the plane may be bigger, it's like limited to 9 because of,
operational requirements. Now, one thing that is interesting is Cape Air this year is taking delivery of a brand new manufactured 9-seat aircraft. Really the first that's entered service in probably decades. It's actually piston powered. It's basically, they worked with a manufacturer to design an aircraft to replace the aircraft they've used for decades, which is a Cessna 402.
Single engine or?
That's twin engine. So one of our issues has been with 9-seat service in the past is Big Lake single engine. That is a twin engine, piston powered, brand new aircraft that they are taking deliveries of this year. And they actually are bidding Marion with that new aircraft.
Do you have any idea what Marion chose out of this list?
These just came out last week, so they now got their 60 days to make their recommendation.
And you said SkyWest is sniffing around a little bit with us?
They have been. So in looking at both dollars and type of service, I would almost guarantee that Marion's gonna choose SkyWest.
Where's Marion on the board? I don't see initials there, where are you?
Marion, Illinois.
Marion, these are all bids for air
Oh,
service
Marion.
at Marion,
All these-
Illinois.
Okay, all these,
That airport's enplanements are roughly at the magic 10,000 number, so about twice ours. Their current operator is Cape Air in their 9-seat Cessna 402s, so they are actually enplaning 10,000 passengers a year with a 9-seat aircraft.
Wow.
So,
That's a lot of running.
well, 36 flights a week is, that's an
Full
average
all-
of
full all
4 a
time.
day. And, so again, I'm starting to track what's out there. I'll periodically over the next 6 months give you updates, so when we get to the point of strategizing around what we want, because I'm thinking that given our current situation, given the sentiment of the board a year and a half ago when we last went through this process, and we basically at that time said if there's not an inner line in place, we are probably going to be looking for a different option than our current provider. That was kind of the sentiment for a variety of reasons. All of these, I shouldn't say all, Boutique, Cape Air, Southwest have interline agreements with either United or American or both. So there are options that can get us what we were looking for. But again, it's a trade-off on a lot of different things. But especially because we've had bids in the past from Air Choice One and Boutique, they know our situation, it's easy for me to reach out to them. Cape Air and SkyWest will take a little bit more groundwork to reach out to, but if we get to the point of having, this is what we'd like and why, I can take that message.
Boutique was talking about getting larger aircraft.
It has not happened.
Well, they got 15 months.
so there's only one on here with a twin engine there? or what?
Well, SkyWest, obviously the
Jet.
50-seat jet is a twin engine, but the only other one is Cape Air. The others are either Cessna Caravan single engine or Pilatus's single engine. So, but again, just starting to think forward.
But still, that's 12 from SkyWest.
Yep.
We'd be happy with 7.
But, and that's where it gets interesting. We'd be happy with 7, but standard essential air service, 12 is the minimum. So they can't bid less than 12. And that's where.
A week.
A week, yes. So basically,
12 times 50.
Yeah, we don't have that now.
Correct. But we have that flexibility under alternate to do that. Would a big company like SkyWest entertain something kind of, different to meet our needs? Where my head is after seeing some of this, is trying to convince SkyWest to do seasonal service with us just in the summer. They do have a couple EAS contracts for a couple airports in the country that have that type of arrangement. And then somebody else paired up with that, hopefully both with United Interlines, such that you can book United year-round, but you just got a different carrier in the off-season versus peak season. I think that matches well with our demand and reasonableness. If, however, SkyWest said, no, they want to do it year-round, I'm not gonna say no, but I don't think, we don't have the need for 50 seats twice a day in January. I would love to have that
Well,
problem.
but again, you've got that real-time snapshot of 10 months,
Yes.
so.
So anyway, just start things to start thinking about going in the future. Again, I'm expecting DOT to be releasing their RFP in either December or January. Some of these conversations should happen before that so that I can be talking with these carriers when that hits the street, so that they're looking at it and thinking about it. Marketing update. Last summer, we had a promo code special that we ran all summer called SkySaver. We have reintroduced that this summer. The marketing for that went out just after the 4th of July weekend. The details of it this year are, it is 20% off airfares in the non-commute, non-advance purchase fares. So what that means is Thursday, Friday, our flights are generally fairly full coming up from Chicago, and Sunday, Monday, they're generally fairly full going back. So those 4 flights are not included in this promotion. So of the 14 flights we do a week, 4 are excluded. This applies to the other 10. And it's also for non-advance purchase fares. So that's generally the fares that you, advance purchase or either require 60-day advance purchase or 30-day, which are our 2 lowest fare levels. So the 129 and 169 levels. So this applies to everything that's more expensive than that, which is the bulk of what people are now booking for summer fall into those categories. So trying to do a little bit to stimulate some additional demand through this sale that will run from now through Labor Day. And then we've already touched in multiple cases on the impact of pricing in Traverse City and how it's impacting us. And that is the end of my report.
So this is starting this week, next week, 129?
It's ongoing.
It's ongoing right now?
Yep, it started last week.
Okay, thanks, Barry. New business, approve the attached amendment to the contract between Newhoff for one runway project.
So I can give some background on this. So we previously had approved our contract with Prina Newhoff. The first version of these contracts don't really include dollars because the dollars are based on what the ultimate project is bid at and approval by MDOT as to the fact that the expenses are reasonable and in line with what consulting services across the state are being charged. So MDOT went through their process and has approved the consulting fees for our runway project, which then creates the need for this amendment to our contract that includes basically that schedule of fees and services and the dollars associated with them. Does that make sense?
So we just need a motion for the, to accept the amendment.
Correct, and authorize someone to sign it.
So the amendment is for $100,000? I mean, that's,
5,500.
I know, but what I guess I'm saying is this out of the original budgeting process, above and beyond out of it?
No, this is,
This is it?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
thought you said this was an error where they came back and made adjustments.
No, this is
Their
just
adjustments were
finalizing
$100,000 off.
the numbers.
Okay.
And this is all part of that federal grant at 100%, so there's no local match. So this doesn't have impact out of our budget.
Make the motion that we approve the amendment we have for Chiefs.
I'll second that.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Yeah,
Roll call.
That's a roll call, you
All right, sit down by.
Like Jeff said, which is wise, when in doubt, do a roll call.
Mr. Bergstrom,
yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Bell,
Yes.
Ms. Goodman,
Yes.
Mr. Dance,
Yes.
Mr. Hall.
Yes.
Part of this document that I got was this back page for Lloyd. Was that supposed to be on there?
You think so?
Did you all get it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got it.
That's going into the board meeting tomorrow. She's gonna be she's being introduced as the new veterans counselor, so no, it was not. Now you know, yeah, it'll be presented tomorrow at the board meeting, so.
So I can.
I just want you to be aware.
All right, I'm gonna remove it.
We want to keep you
Thank you,
posted.
Julie, for sharing.
Veterans might be flying in.
Well, it was interesting. I thought we were gonna interview somebody here today.
Yeah. So that's all the new business? Old business, nothing new on the Coho Bend billboard contract.
How many years or months or whatever have we been, any update on this, Barry?
No.
So,
That was there when I came in, I intend for it to be there when I
oh, really? I was hoping you'd close it to get it done.
This is one of the things that Sailor is not really responding to.
Right.
Yes.
Mark, you
Maybe
get a
it's too busy,
chainsaw.
and maybe we need to be looking at another attorney.
Mark can get a chainsaw and we'll cut it
I was actually gonna have a conversation with Doug after this meeting on that topic. Just
Airport zoning old business, anything there, Barry?
No, I do not have.
Comments by authority members? Gary?
Planting seeds in light of the Costco deal up in Traverse City, where if somebody is interested in real estate, a place for a long lease, something we can do to generate revenue and excitement and traffic. We're open for business here, so.
And we do have a parcel of property we own, which is outside our fence, although it borders on wetlands, so I'm not sure how much of it is buildable, but on the other side of River Road. So there's potential.
Ideal place for another auto parts store.
Under 5 stories.
Well, we'll try real hard to get you $10,005, I think, isn't that the figure?
Yes.
10,003. We
10,003.
can probably figure out where the 3
I
can come
think,
from.
yeah, I'll
Yeah,
squeeze it in
that
there.
I'm okay with.
Barry?
I'm good, thank you.
Nothing for me, so.
Actually,
Oh, my comment before the meeting?
yes.
Yeah, I just don't want this to slip and hit us all at once, but, you know, my position is tentative based on my still owning a home in town. And we had some discussions about that earlier on who might be appointed or come on the board, and I just don't want to let that go too far. We had a very good showing yesterday, open house at my house, so if something pops, I don't want it down the road too far. So if we can open up that thought process again.
So, and there's 2 aspects to that. One is who would replace Doug as a seat on this board, but also who would replace Doug as chair of this board, and really thinking through both aspects of that.
See how easy that
Next
was?
man up.
It's like that.
So,
It's kind of like a sliding
So
chair.
you're going like from month to month, just waiting for it?
Yeah, our house is for sale, and it hasn't had a lot of activity. We were doing it ourselves. We finally got it listed with a realtor. They've had some showings and some success, so I can't move forward with my personal life down there without it selling. At the same time, you know, this is a reality that if I call and say, look, we've got something in process, so we've got a couple weeks.
Come back for your last board meeting.
Yeah,
It's a wonderful opportunity for you, it's a loss for our community.
well, thank you for that. I miss it here, I miss the light traffic.
Yeah.
It hasn't been so late
It's
lately.
unbelievable, I drive through town going, where is everybody at? Because it's not that way down there, there's
Yeah.
traffic everywhere. But, you know, it's interesting, the Grand Haven Airport is totally general aviation. And I think I mentioned this to you, I found out through research, their city, the city of Grand Haven supports it. And their contribution is whatever their downfall is, their net loss. So if they have a loss, the city funds it. Generally speaking, they do a good job because they've got 53, I think, active hangars on the field, and they pay all their bills. So most years they, with their 150 from the feds, they're able to break even or make $1 or $2. But if they fall short, their agreement is it's just covered. That all being said, they're surrounded by industry, and that industry is raising their head again, trying to get the north-south runway closed so they can expand and the city can get more taxes. So there's a fight going on down there, and I guess it's been going on for some time now. And ironically, one of what these industries would like to do, these businesses, the north-south runway expands on either side of the roads for their tree clearance. That's what they want. And so if they get that land, then they have to close the runway because they don't have the clearances, so they're going through the process of trying to find out how much they'd have to pay back to the federal government. And one of the companies is one of the leading aviation antenna companies in the world. So, funny how different communities work, and
Does the city own the airport then, is that correct?
did I tell you the story about washing my airplane last time? I asked the manager, I said, is there a hose available if I find time to kind of wash the plane? And he said, just, yes, but don't indicate what kind of soap you're using because of the PFAS issue.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
I said, I just use dish soap. He said, just don't talk about it. Because if somebody asks, I mean, we're on the radar screen, they're trying to, you know, there's these people out there trying to close a portion of the
Anything they
airport.
can utilize.
Yep. So,
Just to follow up with a couple of things that popped in my head as you were describing that situation is, looking forward to a rosier future, we should be thinking about comparable land uses around our airport. While it is nice to have additional development, even though it's aviation related, at some point it's like, well, that may trump aviation uses. And I know, and kind of ties into the airport zoning, is I know that Manistee Township is embarking on an updated master plan, and I need to be part of that process to make sure that what role the airport has in the township's master plan, because really to date, there hasn't been any communication one way or another. So, and I know the county planner's office is working on that, and they've reached out to me for input into that process, so I will be participating to some level.
that's my comments. Motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned.
all right.
Thank you, everybody.